Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of MazzaOnJets. I'm your host, Evan Mazza here, talking all things New York Jets football. And the Jets have been a very, very busy organization. A lot of talk about here today on the show because the Jets have done something that we haven't seen over the last several years, signing their own. That's right. What a concept. What a concept for the New York Jets. You know, re-signing your own players and keeping your core players and keeping them happy. Over the last 2 days, the Jets were here to talk about re-signings of Garrett Wilson and his contract extension, and of course, yesterday, Sauce Gardner's contract extension. The Jets have gotten deals done with them. Their two top draft picks from 2022 are now locked in for the near future. And I think, look, give you a quick analysis just for that. I think that's a great thing for the Jets. It's exactly what they need. We talked about in the last MazzaOnJets show, but they needed to get those contracts done. And for them to get it done in a span of 2 days, pretty impressive. And it goes to show you what Darren Mougey and Aaron Glenn are about. These are guys that, they didn't draft they didn't draft Sauce Gardner. They didn't draft Garrett Wilson. They didn't draft these guys. They've barely known them for a few months. They've barely known them for a few months, but they are here to but they see their work ethic. I think Albert Breer was on Colin Cowherd's show earlier today, and he said, you know, pretty much Albert Breer said those two have had a great spring. Uh, they've been talking to the team, they've been discussing things with them, talking to the organization, they've gotten to know them well. And I think they've gotten to know them and they've had strong springs and they got their deals done. And these were two situations that for the New York Jets, of course, if you're a Jet fan, you wondered, uh-oh, could this get a little difficult? Could this get a little long? Could one of them get traded and so on and so forth? But no, they are now signed and delivered and locked and will be Jets for the foreseeable future. Let's get to the first contract that was done. That would be Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's contract got done on Monday. He and the Jets reached an agreement on a 4-year, $130 million contract that includes $90 million guaranteed. Garrett Wilson, this is according to Adam Schefter, Garrett Wilson uh, includes 90 million guaranteed. It marks the first time, this is according to Adam Schefter, it marks the first time in NFL history that a receiver has received an average over $31 million after playing only 3 seasons. He'll now be under contract he'll be under contract through the next 6 seasons through 2030. And Garrett Wilson's contract, which is now the fifth highest contract for a wide receiver in the NFL. He's only behind Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf. Those guys are in more than $32.5 million per season. This is now his contract. This is when Wilson's extension officially kicks in. He'll average $32.5 million per season. That per year payday is the biggest contract. It is the biggest per year payday contract in Jets history. He'll become the fifth highest paid receiver in the NFL. Yeah, 2 years remaining on his contract, his current rookie contract with the fifth-year option included. He'll now be under contract for the next 6 campaigns through 2030. So, again, his contract is worth over $130 million, and the deal includes $90 million guaranteed. Look, I know some may look at Garrett Wilson and say that he's not a true number one receiver. Some think he's more a high-end two with the potential to grow as a number one. But I've watched this guy for 3 years. I've watched him for 3 years, and his production over the first 3 years of his career speaks for itself, and especially speaks for itself when you look at all the quarterbacks he's had. 2022, 83, his rookie year, he's had 1,000 yards. He's had 1,000 yards all three seasons. He's had 83 catches, 95 catches, and he cracked 100 last year. 4 touchdowns his rookie year, 3 touchdowns his second year, 7 touchdowns last year. 2022, 83 catches, 1,103 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Second year, 95 catches, 1,042 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Last year, 101 catches, 1,104 yards, and 7 touchdowns. In 3 years, 279 receptions, 3,249 yards, 14 touchdowns. He is average in his career receiving yards per reception, 11.6 receiving yards per reception, 13.3 his rookie year, 11.0 his second year, and 10.9 in his third year. Look, this guy, and if you want to go through it and you want to expand on it even more, you want to keep expanding on it, go look through the quarterbacks he is played with. He has not had a franchise quarterback so far. in his entire Jets run. He'll have another new quarterback this season. Obviously, it's his college teammate, it's his college player, college roommate, and his college teammate in Justin Fields. But go through the list. Go through the list of the quarterbacks there. I'll pop them up right now. Go through the list of all the Jets starting quarterbacks since 2022 when he first came in here. 2022, Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, Mike White. That's three quarterbacks. 2023, you had four quarterbacks: Aaron Rodgers, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, Zach Wilson. Rodgers, of course, was one snap, so that was one drive, so that barely counts. And last year was all Aaron Rodgers. But so that is one, two, three, four, five, six different quarterbacks: Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, and Aaron Rodgers. He's had six quarterbacks over his first three seasons in the NFL. Um, Six quarterbacks through his first three seasons, and he has 3,249 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 279 receptions. He's averaged 11.6 yards per reception. To me, that's money well spent. To me, he's a number one receiver. To me, he's a big time playmaker. To me, he deserves every penny of it. And good on the Jets for getting this contract done and getting it done. I think he deserves it. I think he's a heck of a talent. You may agree, disagree, but I think where his true value is or how he is, or you think maybe overpaying for a wide receiver in this day and age in the NFL may be a little bit overrated because you need to have the quarterback before you get the receiver. And yeah, that's true, but it helps to have that receiver. And the Jets haven't had a receiver like Garrett Wilson, someone they've drafted and developed and had like a talent like this since what, Santana Moss? Let's go through. I mean, go through it. You know, obviously Wayne Corbett was the '90s and early 2000s, but the last truly talented receiver that they drafted that really blossomed into a star was what, Santana Moss. And I think, and you could make the case more people probably remember Santana Moss more for his Washington career than his Jets career. But and Wayne Corbett, they got as an undrafted free agent. And he molded into a heck of a player. But they haven't had a guy like Garrett Wilson in years. Jericho Cotchery was a very solid receiver, but that's about it. He was a very solid, dependable slot receiver, but that was about it. He wasn't a big, he was a very Cotchery. No offense to Cotchery, you know, you know, no offense to Cotchery. He was a very good slot receiver, and I always enjoyed watching him. I always thought it was a big mistake that they released him at the end of the 2010 season, but for 2011. But he was never a number one guy. He was always a three, maybe at best a slot guy, and that was it. He was a guy who went and made catches over the middle. Garrett Wilson is a playmaker, makes terrific catches, great in the red zone, great for touchdowns, and can make terrific catches, great routes, great hands. The Jets haven't had a guy like this in quite some time. So for the Jets to get the deal done, being here for a while, and the fact that he's done it now for six different quarterbacks. Sign, seal, this is what the Jets had to do. They got it done. You may think it's a bit of an overpay for a guy who may not be a true number one. Maybe you think he's just a high end two, but I think it's money well spent. I think he well and heck deserves it. And now the Jets have a core offensive player. I think that's another key thing. A core offensive player, on the roster for the next several seasons. So, and that's something the Jets, again, haven't had in quite some time. A legit offensive playmaker or a core offensive piece, and I'm talking about on the outside, wide receiver, tight end, running back, even offensive line. Who was the last offensive line guy that you say was a core player? Mangold, DeBergershaw, Ferguson? Well, they've been long retired. So you finally have a core offensive player. So Garrett Wilson is your guy. You're committed to him. You got a contract done. You avoided any sort of, thing that might have gone on because obviously there was some tension with Garrett and Aaron Rodgers, but then obviously there probably has been some frustration with Garrett Wilson with losing and also different quarterbacks and different schemes and coaches. You didn't know maybe if he would stick around. He was certainly a guy you thought that maybe the Jets would trade. I mean, look what's going on in Washington right now with Terry McLaurin. And he came out just yesterday, McLaurin. He was very out and about, very outspoken, and how frustrated he was during that contract stuff. So how do you think he feels seeing Garrett Wilson get a deal done while he's still sitting and waiting? So for the Jets to get this, and the Commanders are in a much better spot than the Jets are. So for the Jets to get this done, keep a core receiver player, keep him happy. I think that speaks volumes to where the Jets are in terms of their offense. And then we get to the defense. Not even 24 hours later, the Jets get another big core piece, all said and done. Sauce Gardner, 4 years, $120 million. He is now the highest. This one will be the interesting one for me. He is the highest paid corner in the NFL. Sauce Gardner, a man who has not had more than 2 interceptions in a season to this point, is now the highest paid corner, and who's coming off a down year, is now the highest paid corner in the NFL. Now, this one will come with, I think this comes with a little more scrutiny. This comes with a little more of questions because of the season he had last year, especially. And also, again, I keep bringing it up, his low interception total. But he now has Aaron Glenn, a defensive minded coach, corner who can relate to Sauce Gardner, can relate to him being a high draft pick from the Jets, a corner from the Jets, former defensive back. He can relate to him. He can watch him film. He can improve on his game. So I think Glenn sees him and he sees the talent that's already there with Sauce Gardner and sees the talent that can blossom with Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner, throughout his first couple of years, he was named, of course, the Defensive Rookie of the Year, along with Garrett Wilson, who was also named Rookie of the Year that year on the offensive side of the ball, too, as well. He's a two-time Pro Bowler, a two-time All-Pro. In 2022, 2 interceptions. 2023, no interceptions. He had 20 pass defense in 2020 and 2022, 11 and 11 in 2023. He had 9 last year. He got 1 interception last year. 75 tackles in his rookie year, 57 tackles the second year, 49 last year. So again, I think Sauce Gardner is a terrific cover corner, but there is some work to be done here. I think there's certainly work with his tackling. And I think last year you saw him get beat a couple of times. You saw him get beat sometimes deep. And I think with him, there's certainly a lot more. So I think there's still a lot more room to grow with Sauce Gardner than there is, say, with Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson has proven to be a complete receiver over the last 3 years. But there's certainly more, I think, to Sauce Gardner's game. But the talent is there. We've seen it. The talent is there with Sauce Gardner for him to be a number one corner. So I think it's up to him if he wants to live up to that contract, to be the highest paid corner in football. Look, a corner just won Defensive Player of the Year, Pat Surtain. That contract for the Broncos looks really good right now, considering all the other corners have gotten paid. And now Sauce Gardner has gotten paid. So that contract for the Broncos by Surtain looks better and better. And Surtain just won Defensive Player of the Year. So I think for Gardner to live up to this contract and to be the highest paid corner in football, he's going to have to, I think, I said it again, I'll say it again, I think he needs to get more interceptions. I know that we're in a different league now where interceptions are kind of moot. It's really about, not saying they don't mean anything for corners nowadays, but they certainly aren't as big for corners as they were years ago. But we're certainly in an NFL now where it's more about pass defense, it's more about coverage, it's more about where quarterbacks are picking and choosing and throwing the football. In 2023, a big reason for Sauce's 0 interceptions was because teams just didn't throw the football. They challenged DJ Reed more. But last year, Sauce Gardner was challenged a bit more. And he had some trouble, and especially with tackling. So I'm confident in Aaron Glenn that he's going to fix everything with Sauce Gardner. I think, and according to Albert Breer, he's had a strong spring, just like Garrett Wilson. So I think it's good to get the ball rolling now in this contract, get it done now after 3 years, because say he has a big year. Say he has a big bounce back season next year. I think he's certainly primed for a big bounce back redeeming a big bounce back season next year. I certainly think he's primed for that. If he has a big year and money goes up, all of a sudden you would have had to pay him again. You would have had to pay him instead of not paying him now, but you paid him now. And now if he has a big season, you already have him for the next several years. So, but Gardner's got a lot to work on, I think, to prove that contract. But it's a good thing that the Jets got it done. He's a core defensive piece along with guys like Quinn and Williams and such. And he's a guy you drafted in the first round a few years ago. He is someone that has played well. Last year aside, he has played really well throughout his career. It wasn't a bad. I should emphasize, wasn't a bad year for him last year. It was just not as good. It was just he didn't take the step forward I think you would have liked to have seen him take. He still had a decent season, but not the step forward I think you wanted him to take compared to what he did the first 2 years. So you want to improve his tackling. I want to see him get more interceptions. I want to see him get at least 4 or 5 interceptions. So I think personally, for Sauce, this is a big season for him. This is a season where he needs to prove himself just to get back into the thick of things, get back into the groove, and just just prove once again why you're one of the top corners in all of football. But I think for the Jets franchise, what this means, I think it tells you that look, this is a team that's serious. This is a team that wants to keep their core players happy. They know this team's got talent. Look, we've known that. It's why Jeff fans have been so disappointed over the last couple of years because we see the talent, we see the potential, uh, but the potential just isn't lived up to. And you can say quarterback, coaching, whatever it is, but the talent is just not lived up to. But when you see talented players, it's an important thing to keep them around, keep them happy, keep the fans happy, and keep your organization happy, and and for other players who may want to sign with you and go, oh, yeah, I like Garrett Wilson. I'll go play with him. Oh, I like Sauce Gardner. Yeah, I'm going to play with him. He's going to be there for a while. Defensive players, offensive players, etc. And this is again, it's like I said, something the Jets haven't had some time. It's been a bit. You know, they did re-sign Quinn Williams, but a few years ago, or I think last year, but again, it's not something they've been used to because they haven't been able to get core players in the draft. They've been so bad at drafting over the last many years until recently getting a Quinnen, getting a Sauce, drafting a Garrett Wilson. Heck, I'll even still say Breece Hall, drafting a Jermaine Johnson, drafting a now Will McDonald. Um, Hopefully with Membu and Fashanu, they can be one of those guys. Getting an AVT when he's on the field and healthy, drafting a Joe Tippmann, etc. They're now the Jets are now quietly starting to get better in the draft and draft talented players. They're starting to get it again. They're starting to get it. They're starting to understand that in order for you to win, you got to draft your players, develop players, and then sign those players. They're starting to get it. The Jets haven't been able to sign those players in the past because those players weren't developing and they weren't good. So guys like D. Milner and such, you know, so they weren't able to develop them. Even someone like Sheldon Richardson, who showed plenty of potential, but again, was also inconsistent. But he showed plenty of potential, Sheldon Richardson. So they need to start finding players, drafting players, developing their players, and then paying their players. And I think this was a great first step for this new regime. Again, a regime that didn't draft these guys, a regime that didn't draft them, didn't develop them, didn't scout them. But it was important for Mougey and Glenn to get on the right track and get on the right foot by paying the two big players that were approaching their contract years or were eligible for contracts. Garrett and Sauce Gardner are both core piece on the offense, a core piece on the defense. Very important for the Jets. Very, very, very important. So hats off to them. Good for Garrett Wilson. He got his money. Good for Sauce. He got his money. And good for the Jets to get these two guys locked up because now I think they show the fans and even the NFL, hey, we got some decent players as well. And we're going to try to eventually try to win. We're going to eventually try to win. I don't know I'm not saying they're going to win this season, but there certainly is a silent, quiet optimism about the Jets this season, or at least in the next couple of years. And like I said, like I said in the last show, I firmly believe that as well. I firmly believe that as well because I think this team could win 7 games and actually improve and actually show the league that look, it can be competitive. They're not a Super Bowl team or a playoff team. I think this will be another missed playoff season. So yeah, that's 15 consecutive years. But I think this could be a season where they show significant improvement, show competitiveness, show battle, and show that, hey, that we'll be okay in the next couple of years. But I think moves like this is very important for the Jets and the confidence and their morale in the locker room, morale in the front office. That these are players that they like, they want to keep, and they want these guys to be around for the next several years. So good on the Jets, good on Wilson and Gardner to get their contracts, and I think this is a good sign. If you're a Jet fan, you should be very happy. You should be very happy if you're a Jet fan over the last 2 days now. So you should be very happy. You don't want to see Garrett Wilson get traded. You know, you like him. You don't want to see Sauce Gardner get traded. You like him. You want to see these guys stick around. You want to see these guys blossom into star players, which the potential that they have. So you want to see that. And you want to see that in a Jet uniform. So speaking of Garrett Wilson, ESPN has been coming out with their lists of the top surveying team executives and coaches and scouts around the NFL, but where they have their top players, top 10 players at each positions. Earlier today, they did their top 10 wide receivers, and Garrett Wilson was number 10 on the list over guys like I mentioned him before, Terry McLaurin. Garrett Wilson was number 10 on the list. His highest ranking was number 6. His lowest ranking was unranked. Last year, he was an honorable mention, but his highest ranking was number 6 on the list. So this is what Jeremy Fowler wrote. Wilson makes his top 10 debut after 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. He beats Terry McLaurin. Also, Puka Nacua, he also beats, and Brian Thomas Jr. for the final spot in this ranking. On talent, he's unquestionably a top 10 player. The way he slithers in and out of routes with elite flexibility is Justin Jefferson light. I can understand that. An AFC executive says, quote, he's one of the best separators in the league. I agree with that 1,000%. Garrett Wilson is tremendous at getting separation. One AFC executive said he is a bit of a freelancer as a route runner, which is probably not ideal alongside Rodgers at this stage of his QB's career. But of course, obviously, Rodgers is no longer on the team anymore. An NFL receivers coach called it something different, a lack of detail in his routes. Okay. An AFC scout said he's all over the map. He does his own thing on the field. Vast potential, but he's not close to what he could be. I can actually kind of agree with that. He's not close to what he could be, but what we've seen over the last 3 years, pretty darn good. And certainly there's still more room to grow. An NFL GM said he has produced it in suboptimal circumstances. Yeah, he would only grow in stature in another system more friendly to his skill set. Yeah, look, if I said before, I said on the last show, if Garrett Wilson was on a lot of other offenses, he would be a superstar. He would put up more bigger numbers. He would put up tremendous numbers, and he would be a bigger star than he is. But because he's been on a Jets team and a Jets roster that has flip-flopped through quarterbacks, flip-flopped through head coaches, flip-flopped through systems, flip-flopped through coordinators, it's been a bit tougher for him to get more recognition and to be in more of a friendly system that fits him. But even still, he has put up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Caught more balls every season, 83, 95, 101, 279, scored 14 touchdowns. For what he has shown over the last 3 years, is what the potential, which tells you that the potential is even greater. It tells you that the potential is even greater for him. The fact that he has been in a system, maybe not more to his skill set, but the talent, but the potential is even greater than. That tells you that. It tells you the potential is even greater. So I understand where some of them are coming from, where he's route running all over the map. He's kind of freelance. I agree, but that was also with Aaron Rodgers last year. And Rodgers kind of ran his own offensive system, ran his own thing. On production, I will continue this. On production, the argument is tougher. Some scouts wonder what is holding him back. While Wilson posted 101 catches for 1,104 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2024, Davante Adams had more targets than him. Well, yes, Davante Adams is going to have more targets than him when Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. That's just how it's going to be. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. He's got Davante Adams. Of course, they've have that previous great connection with in Green Bay. Of course, he's throwing the football to Davante Adams. Of course he is. He's gonna throw the ball and trust Davante Adams, a guy he played in Green Bay for years, more than he trusts Garrett Wilson, a guy who he didn't have a season with in 2023 because of the torn Achilles. And oh, and and in training camp, limited training camp time, limited practice time. Of course, he was going to have more of a chemistry, more connection with Davante Adams. Of course, he was. And there was also moments where Rodgers and Wilson just didn't seem to be on the same page. You could see it in the practices, you could see it in games. They just didn't seem to be on the same page. So, of course, Adams was going to get more targets than him. Um, Adams' on state connection with Aaron Rodgers could have played a factor, yes, but it was a shocking disparity for Wilson, who has number one receiver qualities and was poised for a breakout season. Yes, yes, Justin, yes, Garrett Wilson has number one receiver potential. I think he is a number one receiver. Now, this year will be, again, as I mentioned on the last show, this will be interesting because we don't know what this Jets offense is going to look like in terms of passing the football. I think that this is going to be a very run heavy offense with Fields and Hall and Braylon Allen. And Garrett is going to have to be the number one receiver when the ball comes to him and when the passes, when they decide to throw the football. When the Jets decide to throw the football, Garrett's going to have to be the guy. So, 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 so I think that's how it's going to have to be for the Jets and Garrett Wilson. So it's going to be an interesting season. This show, that's why I think the numbers. Uh, that's why I think the numbers are going to be a bit down this year for Garrett Wilson. But as long as he's making big catches, as long as he has that connection with Justin Fields, who they have that connection with from Ohio State, as long as he's scoring touchdowns, I still think he'll have a good productive season. If the numbers I think could say a down season, like I actually don't think he'll get 1,000. I think he could come close to 1,000, but I don't think he's going to crack 1,000 this year. But as long as he's still making big catches, showing development, scoring touchdowns, and being productive in the passing game, then I think you'll still see number one receiver qualities from him. But I do think it's going to be a drastically different Jets offense, and I actually think it should be. They need to focus more running the football because, like I said in the previous show, that's been their bread and butter. That's how they've won, running the football. They win. The Jets have won by running the football over the course of their history. So, but I still think Garrett Wilson's going to be a major factor. I still think Wilson's going to be a big playmaker for them, and I think him and Fields will connect because again, they have that previous connection in Ohio State. And I'm looking forward to seeing it as training camp begins. Training camp begins for all the team. I mean, training camp has already opened up for the Chargers, I think, but training camp begins all around the NFL next week. So I look forward to seeing how their connection continues to grow during training camp and the preseason, as well as the rest of the Jets team. So because I do think this will be a very interesting Jets season this season. But to recap, Garrett Wilson's contract signed, sealed, and delivered. So his contract, to recap, Garrett Wilson's contract, 4 years, 130 million, 90 million guaranteed. He will, when the contract kicks in, he'll be the fifth highest paid receiver in the NFL. Sauce Gardner, signed, sealed, delivered. 4 years, $120.4 million extension. He is now the highest paid corner in the National Football League and in the entire history of the National Football League. So Gardner and Wilson, the Jets did it. You know, the Jets did it. They got the deals done. A lot of Jet fans were wondering. A lot of Jet fans were curious how these two guys would play out, how these two first round pick studs, stars of the team would play out. And the Jets, a new regime, GM, head coach, new front office that's only been in town for a couple of months, with training camp a week away, got those core players done, got those core players contracts done, a core player on defense and a core player on offense, and now you build around it. Now you build around it. Now you continue it and see what happens. And there's going to be more contracts. Of course, Breece Hall is on a contract year this season. We'll see what happens with him. Obviously, he's a running back, so that's going to be that's going to be interesting to watch. Jermaine Johnson, of course, he'll be out for Jermaine Johnson. Of course, he's come off for torn Achilles. Be interesting to see how the Jets handle him. Of course, Will McDonald's still a few years away, but with both Jermaine Johnson and McDonald, be interesting to see how they handle that contract situation. But for now, the Jets, Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, contract extensions are done. They're Jets now for the long haul, and I think that's key for the Jets in their future. And that's what this season. That's what I think the Jets are all about right now, and I think that's what this season is all about: securing the Jets' future, securing their future, and securing their young core players and keeping them happy. So, so good on the Jets for doing it. Good on the Jets for these extensions with Wilson and Gardner. And we'll see if there's any more extensions in next year or so, because there's still there's other young players, like I said, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, of course, Breece Hall, that they're gonna have to look at in a year or so. But for Garrett and Sauce, good job on the Jets. For Garrett and Sauce, it's good to see that their contracts are it's good to see that they got extended. So, and I think it's money well spent, especially I think with Garrett Wilson. I think with Sauce, certainly really good player. I do want to see some more improvement from him next season. I do. Like I said, I want to see at least 5 interceptions. That's all. I may be picky, you know, because I know in the NFL it's not really about interceptions, but I want to see five. I want to see 5 interceptions for Sauce Gardner. If he can get me four, great. If he can get you four, great. But I want to see at least five. I want to see at least 5 interceptions for Sauce Gardner, and I want to see him get better at tackling. But his talent is there. His talent is there. He's a terrific talent. And I think the contract could be money well spent, as well as all the Garrett Wilson thing. But bottom line, Garrett and Sauce's contracts are extended, and the Jets now have their core players on offense and defense for the foreseeable future. So I think that's all good and well and done. I think that's all good for the Jets at Florham Park. And I think it tells you what the Jets are about right now, what this new regime is about, what Aaronglenn and Darren Mougey are about. I think it tells you that. And I think if you're a Jet fan, you should be very happy and very pleased with it. That being said, this style about wrap it up for this edition of MazzaOnJets. Wanted to keep it, just wanted to talk about, we just wanted to hop on and talk about the Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner contracts and where the Jets, what this means for the Jets and what this means going forward as we approach training camp. So that'll about do it for this episode of MazzaOnJets. Stay tuned for tomorrow. I want to do an episode of Mazza on Ravens. I'll talk about the Ravens as they start training camp next week. Friday, going to do Mazza on Mets. Talk about preview the second half for the New York Mets. Also talk a lot about David Wright, as David Wright's number retirement is coming up on Saturday. I said Friday on the last Mazza Mets show. I apologize for that. It's actually on Saturday. Saturday will be David Wright's retirement ceremony. Actually, tomorrow I also want to talk about David Wright's documentary. So look out for 2 shows tomorrow: Mazza on Ravens for tomorrow, and Mazza and just a not Mazza on Mets, but really a Mazza on David Wright. Just want to talk about David Wright's documentary that's going to be released tomorrow on SNY. Looking forward to it. It should be a good one. So be a busy week, and of course Saturday or Sunday I want to try to get my wrestling show out, because we got to talk about some wrestling. There's a lot in the wrestling world we got to talk about. But for MazzaOnJets, this has been Evan Mazza. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Please leave a comment, give it a like, share, and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Have a great day, and let's go Jets.